Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Spill the Beans. I am Tim Bratz, and today I'm sitting down with Jamie Tilke, who is a member of my mastermind legacy family. He's a real estate investor, but in a past life, he was in special forces, special ops for the military. And after leaving that, started a new career in real estate. I think he's got a couple dozen doors right now and looking to scale that into a couple hundred over the next 12 to 24 months. So he hit me up. He's like, hey man, I got some questions for you. He lives in North Carolina. I'm obviously in Charleston, South Carolina. He's like, hey, can I come and visit you? I said, absolutely, dude. Come on down. Let's sit down. Let's grab coffee. Let's talk about any sort of hurdles and struggles that you're facing, and let's punch through them. You know. And so that's what we're gonna be doing today. I already sat down with him for a little bit and talked about some of those things, but I want to bring him up because he's got a lot of valid points that I think are gonna really resonate with you watching this video, because all entrepreneurs go through exactly what he's going through right now. So I'm excited for this episode. I hope you get a ton of value out of it. Jamie Tilke, what's going on, buddy?
Not much.
Welcome in from North Carolina.
Yep.
How you doing?
Good.
We should shake hands too. Dude, so you came in and you said, hey, Tim. So first of all, you came out to one of the masterminds up in Cleveland, one of the small kind of pop-up masterminds that we host, 20 people there. A lot of things made sense, and you're like, oh man, this is exactly what I needed from like a group support standpoint, and decided to join Legacy Family, and then hit me up, and you're like, dude, can I come down to Charleston? Can we just sit down for coffee for an hour and talk through some of the stuff? And I said, absolutely, dude, get down here, and brought Em, your wife, and we sat down and went through a lot of stuff. So what I want to do is I want to hear a little bit more about your background, what got you to here, and then let's kind of continue the conversation for a lot of the things that we talked about while we were grabbing coffee. And just, dude, if you're going through those issues, guess what? I went through all those issues, and a lot of people who are watching this are going through those issues too. So, dude, let's talk through it and have real world conversation. So right now you own 25 doors?
21.
21 doors, you're a joint venture partner in another 12. So dude, you're at 33 doors. To some people who are watching this, that's like mind-boggling, right? And an office building. And to other people, they're like, dude, how would you ever get there? How did you scale to that? And you're like, I'm trying to move past this because this is a tough point in the business right now, you know? So before we get into that, give me a little bit about your backstory. Like, how'd you get started? I know you got some military background, right?
Yeah.
From upstate New York?
From upstate New York. Left there when I was 18 to be a rock star. That didn't work out, obviously. So then I watched Rambo, said, fuck, I want to do that. Sorry for the cursing.
No, you can say fuck. We don't.
So I was like, I'm going to do that. So I joined, went in the military, did 24 years in special operations, was in Rangers, and then eventually went into special forces. But around the 2007 timeframe, I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that for a lot of people was an eye-opener, like, holy shit, I've been thinking about money and finances the wrong way. So I went straight up to Washington, Washington State, that is, which was my next duty assignment. And I bought 2 houses in less than 8 weeks. When I could just hand them my paycheck stub and they would approve me for the loan.
Yeah.
Problem is I then deployed to Iraq, went through divorce and lost both of them. So my entrepreneurial dreams of being a real estate mogul ended really quickly.
Yeah.
So then I kind of just put it on the back burner and then continued on. And fast forward, I was sitting in the room watching like my 1000th episode of HGTV in Hawaii in a hotel, and I was like, I want to do fucking real estate.
Yeah.
So told my wife, gave her a phone call and said, hey man, let's do this real estate stuff. And so we decided to come to Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I wanted to come to Fayetteville, North Carolina because not only was it a duty assignment for us, but it's a very stable market. Mm-hmm. So from all the research that I had ever looked at, even in 2008 when the market crashed, it was a blip on the radar for them because the military people are always going to get their BAH, right? Mm-hmm. So while everybody else was crumbling, it was mild at best for that area. But anyway, so I got my real estate license, and then I had this concept that I wanted to open up short-term stays for military people because there's 12,410 people that go TDY to Fort Bragg every single year. So I was like, let's capitalize on that. Mm-hmm. And I pitched the idea to about 10 people, and everybody's like, love your enthusiasm, love the concept, not going to work. I was like, all right. Flew out to California, pitched my best friend since we were 9 years old, and said, you know me, man. I'm going to make it happen. Like, but I need the money. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And I've heard your stories before. I did the same thing. I was like, you can have 50%. I just need to get started. I don't have the capital, but I have the concept and the motivation. And so that's kind of what got us into it. And so
Is that the 12 unit?
Yes, that's the 12 unit. It was it probably should have been bulldozed. Many contractors said you can rebuild these for cheaper than you want to renovate them for. But I wanted to keep the nostalgia and the retroness of the buildings, and I wanted to make it a better place. Moving forward, it ended up coming around where we actually connected with a lady who sold us another property because she saw what we were doing, and her father built that in 1965. So anyway, we established that.
So you got a deal from someone so her dad was the developer in 1965, and because you didn't demo it, she came back and said, hey, I want to sell you some of my other properties because you guys actually care about these buildings and they had intrinsic value to her.
100%.
And then she ended up selling you some other properties, huh?
7 acres with 12 more units on it.
That's great, man. That's cool.
In fact, true story, we went to that property to view it. We connected the dot, and she's like, wait, you own that property 1 mile down the road? I go, she's like, my dad built that in 1965. I go, you want to see it? She went over there. It was very emotional for her. She broke down because that's where she grew up as a kid. And so for her...
Did she live in those?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And her dad built them this is 1965, he wasn't a developer.
Yeah, did by hand, right?
By hand.
Yeah.
And he built these things, and it was a very emotional for her. And this is also part of the true story. The second property, the 7 acres, a group of investors were flying down from Canada the next day. They were going to offer her $1 million in cash. She's like, I'm selling it to you.
Wow.
Seller financed.
Seller financed.
5% down.
5% down. And what was the purchase price?
$960.
And got a discount. It's amazing. I mean, it shows you that it's not all about the dollars and decimals. You know, a lot of times there's some sort of emotional attachment to this stuff, and people want to see that it's actually going to be taken care of. This is something that fed their livelihood, that fed their family over the course of many decades.
Exactly.
And they don't want to see that property fall into the wrong hands or somebody who's just doesn't care. So like one of the biggest portfolios in Legacy Family, that's how they built they don't do mass marketing. They identify a property that they want, and they go and build a relationship with the seller, with the owner, and they follow up, develop the relationship, and eventually they say, hey, I'll sell it to you, you know? And so it's a powerful way. It's like, but it also shows you both ways work, right? You could do the mass marketing, direct mail and outbound phone calls and text messages and ringless voicemails and all that other stuff. Or you can go out and develop relationships with people, and she's got more property too that you guys are talking about potentially buying stuff from. That's a key play, man. I think it's really important to be, in that market, figuring out who owns a bunch of the properties, developing relationships with those people, and seeing, how can you serve them and how can they serve you.
Yeah, and the deal actually took a year to close because we were getting ready to close at 6 months, and we were walking through the property, and she had another very emotional thing. The thought of the fact that she was about ready to release what had been in decades of her family's establishment is just too much and overwhelming. And I said, it's at your time, And we legitimately built a very personal relationship. In fact, she just texted me this morning. Like, we talk routinely. She's very spiritual. We're very spiritual. She's very much connected. But I think what she loves so much is 2 things. Number one, we weren't going to destroy what her dad and family had built, as you already stated. The second thing is our purpose was, I want to rehabilitate these, and I want to make them upscale accommodations for military people coming TDY, right? My time is done. I'm passing the torch. Let's provide crazy ass places for these guys to stay. That blows the Marriott, Hilton, and all that away. And, we've been up and running for 3 years now. So again, it was she believed in what we were doing for the community as well.
I love it, man. And it shows that it's not all about the dollars, it's not all about the price point. A lot of times, especially for somebody in that stage of their life, it's about the purpose.
Yes.
Right? And the impact and the long-term legacy that we always talk about. I think that's probably on most people's minds, is like, how am I going to still sustain or maintain, memory. How are people going to remember me and what I did and all this other stuff? And like, that's really important to them, not just, making the most money. They know that they can't take that, but they want to be remembered, and they want to make sure that what they dedicated their life to sustains long term as well. So that's cool, man. Oh, I love it. I love the purpose-driven business method and the purpose-driven way that you develop these relationships. And you're really good at that. You're really good at developing rapport with people. You're really good at developing those relationships where they want to do business with you. So you're 21 doors. You got those 12 units with that joint venture partner. You own 100% of the other 21 doors.
Correct.
And the reason you came down here is you're like, hey, I want to grow the team. I need to scale the team. I realize, essentially there's a limitation in me owning 100% of all these different doors, and I need to bring on some A-player team members, and I need to, I want to be very generous with the equity that you're giving up without being overly generous where you're doing all the work and you're just giving away equity, And so that's I think a bottleneck for a lot of people, right? Like, hey, I got it. There's proof of concept here. I know I can make money doing this, but now how do you scale it, right? Like, how do you build out the team? What does that look like? And so right now, it's you and your wife managing everything and operating everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so what do we talk about? First hire?
Assistant.
Hiring an assistant immediately.
Tomorrow.
Get the administrative stuff off your plate and hand that off to somebody else. Because what you're good at is those revenue generating things. You do it in a way that's not salesy, that's not cheesy. It's relationship driven, right? It's developing relationships with sellers in order to acquire more deals. It's developing relationships with private money lenders in order to raise more money. And then the next hire that we were talking about is really, not really even next hire, but it's elevating that assistant into more of an operations role.
Yeah.
Handling all the admin stuff and then handling all the operational side of things, taking that off your plate. Because you don't sell anything, you're looking to hold long term. So you being able to focus on acquisitions and raising private money, I'm telling you, that one hire is going to take you like this. You're going to hit 100 doors with one person on your team.
Yeah, I believe you. I'm super pumped. Re-listening to the Commercial Empire. I mean, just to go back, I didn't mention this earlier, but I attended yours in Tampa, Florida, 2019, right?
Yeah.
2019?
Yeah.
So I attended that, but going back and listening to it, like, you need to hear that information. It's like I talk to people about, reading scripture, right? Well, why am I doing it? I'm doing it to keep it front of mind, top of mind, right? So it's even attending your stuff and putting myself, as I kind of said to you earlier, keeping myself in and around that people at your level and all the people that you draw into you, because they're all struggling with the same things, and we're rowing in the same direction, right? And people understand it. So
it's just different levels of a lot of the same problems, right? And it's just like, as you're growing and as you hit these bottlenecks, it's like, what does that look like? And I think, to your point, you got to go out and get the information over and over. Like, it's, I don't know, some statistics said, I think you maintain about 7 or 8% of everything that you hear. Mm-hmm. Like, you actually retain it. So if you hear something, you only retain 7% of it. That means you got to hear that thing or go to that training essentially 12 or 13 times in order to retain 100% of the information. Because what happens is you're sitting there and you're listening, and then all of a sudden there's a thought that gets triggered. Something I say triggers a thought, and you're like, oh my gosh, I went through that with this relationship or with that seller. And I kept on talking while you're thinking that thought. And then you come back over here, right? And you finally come back in, but you missed everything in between. And then I say something again that triggers another thought, and you go off thinking about, how that has impacted you and your business and your life. And so, like, you have to be out there and plugging into this over and over again. It's like rereading the Bible, rereading the book, rereading or rewatching a movie, re-listening to a song. You don't get all the lyrics the first time you listen, You got to listen to it several times before you really catch what it's saying. And so that's the same thing with all these trainings. It's like, if you want 100% of it, you have to watch it more than just once.
Yeah.
And be part of it, be ingrained. And every experience that you have is going to change your perspective too, right? You're going to go and collect another 50 doors, and you're going to have a way level different set of problems or hurdles or bottlenecks that you're facing. And you're like, all right, great, I hired the assistant, but now here's my next level problem. Now I need to figure out, how do I raise $2 million? I've done $2 million in my career. How do I raise $2 million for a single deal? You know? And then it's like, it's cool because it's different levels of similar problems,
Well, on that very topic, I know one of the things that I wanted to ask you is like, Was there any revelation or something that kind of transpired for you with figuring out how do you become fully capable of sponsoring your own deal, right? Because obviously on paper, you got to look a certain way or they're not going to take you in. And like, that's something that we've been talking about recently is, how am I going to position myself so I can be the sponsor? I mean, we can bring on other sponsors and I'm okay with that too, but one of our goals is like, I want to be, whether I'm the sponsor or not is not relevant per se, but how do I put myself in a position to do that? And I guess to be more specific is like, did you do anything specific with managing your portfolio and stuff that was the catalyst that really put you in there?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a great question. And for anybody who's not familiar, sponsoring a loan is essentially the signer of the loan. It's just what they call it in commercial real estate. So in order to be able to sponsor a loan, you need to have 3 criteria met. Number 1 is you need a net worth equal to the loan amount. So if you're doing a $5 million loan on a $7 million deal, you need a net worth equal to $5 million. You also need 10% of the loan amount in liquidity. So if it's a $5 million deal, you need 500 grand liquid cash in your pocket or in your bank account. And that's post-closing. That's after all down payments and all that stuff. So you can't be using that money for the down payment to acquire the deal. And then the third thing is you need the experience in owning and managing that number of units or that type of asset. And so, what if you have an e-commerce business or a traditional business, or you're a doctor or a dentist and you have the net worth and you have the liquidity, but you don't have the experience? You're not going to get the loan, but maybe you can bring in a third-party management company that can qualify for the experience side. Well, hey Tim, I've managed 600 houses before and multifamily units, and I know more about management than anybody else, but I don't have the net worth and the liquidity. You're not going to get the loan unless you bring on somebody to co-sponsor or co-sign on that loan, who has the net worth, who has the liquidity. And by the way, it's not just one person. You can partner and collectively between 2 or 3 people, if they have the combined net worth and the combined liquidity and the combined experience, then they can co-sponsor the loan and qualify for it that way. So here's what my boy Chris Litzler did. Chris Litzler has brokered hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate for me over the course of commercial mortgages for me over the course of the past 5, 6, 7 years. And when I was in your seat, you know what he told me? Exactly what I told you in there. What do we need to get to immediately, as soon as possible?
100 doors.
100 doors.
Okay.
So 100 doors gets you to about $10 million in portfolio value.
Yeah.
100 doors now gives you the net worth, typically gives you the liquidity, right, and the experience to sponsor 98% of all deals in the country. 98%. Because 98% of all deals are less than 100 doors. So now you can qualify and you can sponsor the loan on 98% of every single deal out there. And it gives you the net worth, it gives you the liquidity typically, right? And it gives you the experience, and it allows you now to posture up a little bit, puff your chest out and talk to brokers. And puff your chest out and talk to sellers. And create a deck of all the past deals that you've done in order to raise money on future deals, right? And so it just, having that track record sets you up to be able to do that. And that's why we were talking in there, it's like, dude, get to 100 doors as soon as possible. You get to 100 doors, everything else, that's the obsessive thing that I would only be focused on. And the other thing that we talked about when we were grabbing coffee is, dude, I wouldn't do heavy value add deals in order to get there. I would just do deals that are cash flowing. The easiest way to get into cash flow is to buy cash flow. So buy a deal that's already cash flowing, it's already 80, 85, 90% stabilized. Maybe there's some improvement for you to bring in management and increase occupancy and reduce turnover and stuff like that. But I would find existing deals that are already cash flowing and just pay retail price, because it's not about that deal.
Yeah.
It's about what does that deal set you up to be able to do.
Yeah.
By you being able to get into that deal, it allows you to now set up and get a seat at the table to negotiate on another 50 doors or 100 doors or all these other apartment buildings that's going to take you to multiple hundreds of doors faster.
That's a huge takeaway for me today. 1, the assistant. 2nd is the 100 doors.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my marker on the wall now. because
Dude, I obsessed over it. I was like, 100 doors. My password for all my logins was 100 doors. 100. Like, legitimately, I couldn't log into anything. I couldn't sign into anything. I couldn't do anything without writing out 100 doors every single day, multiple times. And it just obsessed. It hit a trigger where I was like, I need 100 doors as soon as possible. Because he was like, dude, you need to build a balance sheet in order to be able to qualify for these loans.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think the good thing about you saying that is it's quantifiable, right? It's tangible in its understanding of the content, right? It's 100 doors,
Yep.
right? So that's very easy to understand. So I'm super pumped about that.
And it's easy for you to convey that to your team too.
Yeah.
You know, so now it's like everybody has the common goal. It's not like, oh, we want to do this, this, and this, and these other things, and this on the way there, and then beyond that, it's like, dude, let's just get to 100 doors. That's the benchmark right now that we got to hit, and then we'll think about the next goal beyond that. But right now, it's like, let's get to 100 doors as soon as possible.
I think what I'm going to do to inspire myself is, instead of changing my password, from now on, I'm just going to wear a t-shirt every day that says 100 doors until it happens.
That's it.
We're going to have to buy 10 t-shirts.
Write it on the whiteboard when you walk into the office. Post it. Put it in a picture frame. 100 doors. Or pick a picture of 100 doors. Like whatever it is, just get 100 like reminders everywhere. You know?
I'm going to wear that t-shirt to Nashville, man.
I do it.
I'm gonna
100 doors. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Dude, I love it.
And again, it's not, oh, well, I'm going to wait for a 100-unit deal. Don't do that. Just any way that you can get to 100. I don't care if they're single family, if they're duplexes, quadplexes, 8 units, 15 units, 50 units, get to 100 doors.
Yeah.
Right? Just start
Awesome.
taking down deals and get the momentum. The momentum is more important than anything else, right? Because that momentum is going to give you the ability to raise money on a 2-unit, a 20-unit, and then a 200-unit. You know, it's going to give you the momentum in your local market. Like you're in a big enough market, but also a small enough market where everybody's going to know you. You know, and when you're out there buying deal and transacting deal after deal after deal, you're going to get the reputation of somebody who transacts deals, of somebody who's out there doing stuff, and be like, oh shit, this Jamie guy, man, came out of the blue and he's just taking down deal after deal after deal. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a good deal. Obviously we don't want to do bad deals, but the reality is, buy cash flowing properties if the cash flow makes sense,
yeah,
and your ROI is greater than your cost of capital, then dude, it's going to cash flow positive. It doesn't matter what the economy happens, but it allows you to take an acquisition fee, start bringing some cash in.
Yep.
It allows you to start generating cash flow from management fees and from actual cash flow from the property, right? And then it gives you the equity. Remember what we were talking about, like building wealth?
Yeah.
You want cash flow, and equity.
Yep.
People are like, well, cash is king. No, cash flow is king. No, equity is king. Dude, the reality is it's an oligarchy, right? You need all three of them. It's not like any one is the monarch. It's all three of them are critical in order to building wealth. And so by taking down your own properties and building your own assets, dude, it gives you the cash up front and acquisition fees, gives you the cash flow from the management fees and the cash flow, right? And then it gives you the equity of increasing your net worth. Yeah, it's on paper, but like, who gives it? That's what the banks look at, you know?
Yeah.
They're looking at all three of those things. And then it gives you the experience and the momentum. Dude, I would be so focused on hitting 100 doors as soon as possible.
I'm hyper focused, super hyper focused. When I research and stuff and listen to yours and many other people's stuff, it seems very typical that a lot of people structure their deals at a 2-year refi and potentially a 5-year. I know there's a lot of variables, but would you say that that's the most kind of, for lack of a better term, it's kind of like the standard, if you will?
Well, I think when we were doing heavy value add stuff, yeah, we could restabilize a property in 6 to 12 months, do all the renovations, and then we take about a year to get it all leased up, and then renew the leases and stuff. And then once we renew the leases, then we can refinance in 24 to 36 months, somewhere in that ballpark. Dude, you remember? I mean, you bought your first properties in what, 07?
Well, when I lost those ones,
yeah.
Yes.
But do you remember what happened right after that?
Yeah,
it was all REOs.
Yep.
And then there was short sales.
Yep.
And there was loan modifications. And then there was just buying the shit out of rental properties that are pennies on the dollar. For 30 cents, you could buy all these properties. And then it turned into the BRRRR method was a big deal. And that's when I really started scaling. I was BRRRring, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, apartment buildings. And that made sense, because guess what? You could find deals that you could buy it, renovate it, and be all into it for less than what the LTV was on the stabilized appraised value. So if I'm buying a building, I'm all into it for $7 million and it appraised for $10 million, and I can get a 70% loan to value, guess what? I'm able to pay off my acquisition financing, pay back all my investors.
Yeah.
And now, dude, it's just house money in play. And so that worked. That worked when that happened. But then cap rates started coming down. Valuation started going up, but you're still constrained by debt service coverage. And all of a sudden, you couldn't pull money off the table. And fucking COVID hit, and nobody's working, right? Because the government's paying them to stay home. So now you're like, shit, now I don't have anybody to renovate these things. There's an eviction moratorium in place for 18 months. Dude, imagine buying a heavy value add and all of a sudden you can't evict anybody for a year and a half.
We did.
Yeah, dude, I had 2,000 doors that I bought in 2019. I bought another 500 in the beginning of 2020, right before COVID hit. I was sitting in a very precarious position for 12, 18 months after all this shit went down. And then supply chain screwed up too.
Yep.
You can't get the material and the supplies that you need in order to renovate these things. So it's like, but guess what? Markets shift, markets change. There's always a new tweak, right? And so we stopped doing heavy value adds. We started buying stabilized stuff. And I think when you're buying stabilized stuff, to come full circle to your question is, now you need to rely a little bit more on rent bumps, And the good news is, typically rents track inflationary increases.
Yep.
So if inflation's up by 8% this year, could you bump up rents by 8%? I mean, statistically, yeah, I guess you could. I mean, you're gonna have some turnover in units, maybe not. It depends on how under rented they are and what does that look like on an ongoing inflationary picture. So I'm looking at it from a standpoint of okay, let's just buy something, we'll bump rents. Really, we're looking at other ways to increase income and decrease the expenses in order to then create that spread, right? So now we're not doing heavy value adds to create appreciation, put sweat equity in. Instead, we're doing it more from a management perspective.
That makes sense.
So we're doing it more from adding different amenities that we can charge for, right? I think I was telling you, one of the things that we've done for a lot of our Georgia properties is we've taken the shitty, busted up, broken tennis courts, and then we'll repave, well, not repave them, but we'll either put turf down or we'll put, I guess paint them and then clean them all up and make it like a dog run. So now the dogs can run in and out of there. Instead of me spending $10,000 to tear it all down and have it shipped out and then put new grass there and then there's nothing for the tenants, instead, I clean up the fencing, we paint the fence, the chain link fence, we paint the flooring, and reseal that, and then we put a couple doggy bag dispensers up, and now it's an asset. It cost me $1,000 or $1,500 to do it. I saved money on the CapEx, and we're able to generate revenue. Not from that, but now it attracts pet owners, and the pet owners pay a $200 non-refundable pet fee to move in, and then they pay an extra $25 to $50 a month per pet. So it's now attracting pet owners because it's an amenity for pets. We harden the property anyways with LVT flooring and stuff where there's not carpet or anything that can get screwed up from dogs or cats or anything anyways. And then it generates more revenue. So all that money goes straight to the bottom line, and it exponentially increases the cost or the value of the property. So we're doing stuff like that instead of heavy value adds.
In the time that you guys have done that with hardening the properties, this is one of the things that we've been apprehensive about doing, is have you found that those things that you're doing actually aren't outweighing the cost of what it does when you do have a pet that's disruptive?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We have a pet fee up front. We're getting a premium on rent also on a monthly basis, and we still have a 1-month security deposit. So if that pet screws up the apartment, it really can't screw it up that bad because we're again, dude, we use the same paint across all my properties across the entire country. So we have a ton of this paint. We're going to go in and probably repaint it anyways. If they screw up some of the door jambs or they're chewing on something, we deduct it from the tenant's deposit and we change out the trim or we putty it all up or whatever that is. We don't have carpet, so we can go in there, we can sweep, we can mop, and you don't even know that a pet was ever in there.
Yeah, no, that's good, because that's just the cost. That's what we were trying to figure out. So based on what you're saying, you guys haven't had a lot of damage that was exponentially, worse than the cost that you put into it.
No, And here's the thing, dude, 99% of all your issues being a landlord will be eliminated if you screen your tenants and you take care of your property.
Yeah.
Right? You do those two things and 99% of the crazies aren't there, right? So if you're screening your tenant and they come in and they're giving you a first month security deposit and a pet fee, and you're making sure that they have 3 times the income of what their monthly rent is, and you're making sure that they don't have any evictions on their background, and you're making sure that they don't have any violent criminal history, and you make sure that their credit report is decent, chances are they're going to be a decent tenant and take care of the property.
That makes sense. No, it's good.
So,
good stuff.
No, man, there's a lot of good things that you're working on. I'm excited that with a couple of these takeaways, there's a lot more that obviously we talked about, and I know that you could implement. But if we're like really just focused, I would just focus on hiring an assistant immediately, like making a commitment to have an assistant before the Nashville event.
Yep.
And then the other thing, so that's 4 weeks. You gotta put the job description out there, interview some people, bring somebody on immediately to start by, let's call it October 15th.
Yep.
You know, let's get somebody to handle the administrative side of things for you and a lot of the operational side, so you can get focused on the revenue generating activities of talking to sellers and raising capital.
Yep.
That's what all of your day should be focused on. And then, now you're just pushing to 100 doors.
Because my wife heard you say that from now on every night, she's going to be like, remember what Tim said?
Yeah, 100 doors, 100 doors, 100 doors.
Well, that and what you said, which is raising capital and finding more deals. Because that's what, the topic of conversation comes all the time is like, why are you wasting that whole thing that we went through in Cleveland with you, where is this a $10 task, is this a $100 task, predominantly my day has always been filled with $10, maybe $50 task.
Yep.
But, I might go to a gathering, have a couple conversations, people get super incentivized and they're like, bro, I got 200 G's, you want it?
Yep.
And then we walk away and my wife's like, 45 minutes, 200 G's.
Yep.
Now you can
put that single investor into $1 million deal, get an $800,000 loan from the bank, $200,000 down payment. I don't know, let's call it an $800,000 deal. So that way you can have a little bit of room for operating capital. You can take an acquisition fee of 2 to 3% on that. Dude, that's 25 G's up front in your pocket. You can do a deal like that twice a month, right? And now now you're making 600 grand up front in just acquisition fees. Plus you got enough cash flow coming in order to essentially pay you a salary or take care of the overhead for your assistant and your operations team, for management fees and stuff like that. And now you got the balance sheet built.
Yeah.
Meaning now you can go and sponsor your own loans. You don't have to give up other equity to somebody else to sponsor loans for you. Dude, and everything falls in place if you just go out there and get to 100 doors immediately.
Yeah, these events, this time with you, the Nashville event, I'm super pumped about. The Commercial Empire stuff we just went, the Cleveland event, it's all invaluable. That whole cliche statement, you practice what you preach, right? My wife would contest, I'm preaching this stuff, but I'm not doing it, right? And so being in and around, the whole adage, you are the total sum of the 5 people you hang around the most. So being around these events, being around is just constant reminder of like, stop that. I'm always working in the business instead of on the business, yep. Right? And so I super appreciate all those, all that information, all that advice and stuff like that. It's incredibly helpful.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, I'm excited. I'm excited for some big results between now and Nashville. So I'm gonna hold you to it.
It's coming.
All right, buddy. Well,
all right.
Dude, thanks for being on Spill the Beans, bud.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, hopefully you guys got a ton of value out of that. I know a lot of the things that Jamie's going through in his business, all these growing pains, are things that I went through and things that hundreds of people that I've coached go through as well. So I'm sure a lot of his struggles and bottlenecks and things that he's going through right now resonated with you, and hopefully my feedback to him resonates with you as well. And so implement this stuff. Give me your biggest takeaway in the comments section, and if you have any questions about the conversation that I had with Jamie or want me to elaborate on anything else, put it in the comments below. I'd love to create some more videos, some more content for you answering your specific questions. So just do me a favor, comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it. It helps our numbers and our algorithm, so that way we can help more people. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and until next time, we'll see you on Spill the Beans.